Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 4 of season 2 of The Mandalorian, or chapter, I believe it's 12, and this episode was back at Navarro with Mando and the child and Gina Carano's character and of course Carl Weathers, who also directed this episode, which I did not know he directed stuff. He has some history of directing some TV shows, including one episode of Hawaii Five-O, but this is really the biggest thing he's ever directed, and I think he did a pretty damn good job, especially with the action in this episode. This episode was action-packed, and my gosh, had a great chase sequence towards the end of it. But let's get into this with all spoilery glory, guys. This is a spoiler review, so if you guys have not seen this episode of The Mandalorian, I'm going to be talking about spoilers. There's a lot of interesting stuff happened in this episode, and I thought it was going to start off as more of a side mission-y type side mission episode, I guess, but it definitely was not. It was definitely had a lot of storyline that I wasn't expecting for us to get for this season. I don't know why I didn't expect this type of stuff, but we did, so let's just jump right into this episode. So we start off the episode with Mandalorian and the child in their broken apart, falling apart Razor Crest ship. This thing is just a disaster for the past, ever since the beginning of the season. This thing's just been a wreck. But he's flying around in this thing, and he can't quite make it to the planet where Ahsoka is. So no Ahsoka, unfortunately, in this episode, which is what I was hoping for. But, you know, we might have to just wait one more episode. Next episode, we'll see Ahsoka, finally. But for this episode, they decided to take a little detour to Navarro, where they see, like I said, Gina Carano and Carl Weathers, and they have a whole little thing. They have to go on a mission to go to this Imperial base to blow it up because they don't want any more Imperial presence on Navarro whatsoever, because after this, Navarro will be a free planet, which I really like this planet of Navarro that they've kind of set up with, especially between the first season and now with this season, of how much has changed since then, and how even the costumes for those two characters are much more, you know, they seem a lot cleaner, they seem a lot more wealthier and built up, and there's a school where the child has to stay there for a while because they have to go on their little missions, so they have to leave the child behind, and there's just a lot of great world building within this planet of Navarro that was great to see. I really like this planet. I really enjoy them going back here. Except for one fact, which I will get this over with real quick. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but I do want to talk about Gina Carano and how she's a terrible person. But yeah, guys, I really love her character. I think she has a lot of fascinating stuff of being an ex-Republic, you know, like trooper. Or not, I was about to say stormtrooper, but she was an ex-Republic trooper, and she's from Alderaan, and she has all this storyline. She said later in this episode where she had lost all her family in the explosion of Alderaan, which was very just telling of her character and all these things that she has in her backstory. And obviously having Gina Carano being the person that she is, which again, I don't want to get too much into, let's just maybe recast her, because I love this character. Some people just want them to either kill her off or just not have her in the show anymore, but I really like her character, and I like her relationship with Mando and all these different things, so maybe just recast her. I think that'll work out for the best. And Carl Weathers, he is fantastic in this role. I love Greef Karga and his entire kind of relationship with the Mandalorian, and how, you know, he started off, you know, just hiring him for jobs, but now they have a real actual friendship, and they have kind of a system of, I guess friendship is kind of an odd word to use, but they have a system that they kind of use with each other, like, oh, I give you one thing, you give me another, we have to work together on this thing, because Mandalorian obviously doesn't necessarily want to make friends, even though he is, and he's not really treating them necessarily as friends, but you know, they have a system where I do one thing for you and you do one thing for me, and they have a great thing going on. And of course, that's what gets us started on this entire mission. And when they first go to this Imperial base, I was thinking, okay, we're going to get some stuff with maybe Moff Gideon, and something that he's probably not going to be in this episode much, but I fear that's going to have something to do with that storyline, which is what I was talking about at the beginning of this episode. I thought they were going to just have their own side mission. I wasn't expecting it for this season, because how they set it up of Mandalorian looking for more of his kind so he can find the Jedi, so he can bring the child to his kind. And I was expecting more of that type of stuff in this season, but we got a lot more with the Doctor and that whole storyline from season 1 that I wasn't expecting, because obviously they killed Werner Herzog last season, so he didn't really have too much of a role in that one. But the Doctor was there, and he made a brief return in a hologram in this episode, talking about how they were taking the blood samples from the volunteer, even though it's definitely not a volunteer. He's talking about the child, and they're creating these weird creatures in these tanks, and what is this research going towards? They're clearly trying to clone, I guess, the Force aspect. I think they're trying to create a new, like, Sith maybe, or some Force user type person. That's my assumption of what this is being. But if you guys have any ideas of what they're actually trying to create in this lab, I would be very fascinated to hear you guys' thoughts, because I thought this is the most fascinating part of this episode, because this episode was also written by Jon Favreau, as the entire series has been created by him. But this is the kind of stuff that he's getting into, and it's very, very different and very unexpected from what you were thinking you were going to get from this show. Like I said in the last video, if you guys did not watch that one, definitely go check that out. But with Katie Sackhoff and all the Mandalorian storylines, and the talk about Mandalore and how that planet has kind of fallen apart since the fall of the Empire, or really the fall of the Republic, back after the Clone Wars. Like, that's really when that place really went to hell. And that's what I was expecting from this show when I first heard that The Mandalorian was coming out. I was like, oh, we're going to get some awesome Clone Wars tie-ins with Mandalore and different Mandalorians and Bo-Katan and all these different characters. But we're getting a lot more stuff in this direction, where now we're getting into this cloning. We're getting into possibly trying to create Force users, which is a very fascinating concept that I think they're trying to do, and who knows what Moff Gideon's actual plan is. But Moff Gideon obviously showed up at the very end of the episode, and now he knows where Mandalorian is because he has that little tractor beam on him. So this is all starting to head together in the fact that I think the last 3 episodes of this season, I think next episode is going to be a whole little another side mission-y type thing with Ahsoka, and they're going to do that thing. But I really hope by the end of this season, now don't count me on this, I'm not expecting this to happen. I'd really love for this to happen. But by the finale, I want to see Moff Gideon, obviously the Mandalorian, Bo-Katan, and Ahsoka all battling it out, doing something, some sort of storyline where all these things come to a head, because obviously Bo-Katan is looking for Moff Gideon because he has the Darksaber. Then we have Mandalorian going to find Ahsoka so he can leave the child with her, with the other Force users and the other Jedi. And obviously I think the Empire is trying to do something with Force users, something like that, and Moff Gideon is after the child, obviously. So even if Mandalorian gets to Ahsoka and he leaves the child with Ahsoka, he might have to go back to protect them from Moff Gideon, and that's when Bo-Katan is going to join, and all 4 of them should, by the end of the season, hopefully, crossing my fingers, but hopefully by the end of the season, that there's a four-headed like race going all for these different things, all these characters looking for different things, having different motivations, but they're all coming to a head all together in a crossroads at the end of the season. That is what I want for the end of this season, and I think this episode really set it up pretty well, because especially with every episode in this season, and obviously we still don't know what's going on with Boba Fett, so maybe Boba Fett joins in there and causes some more chaos. So who knows where the show is going to go. Maybe they're just leaving little seeds, it's like bits and pieces here and there, and maybe we're going to get Boba Fett maybe in another like side episode type thing, or maybe, I don't know, we're going to get Timothy Olyphant back. And so I don't know. But there's been so many character setups, and every single one of these episodes has been so separate from each other. They've all felt like different side quests from each other, even though some of them have had important aspects of them. Like obviously the first episode reintroducing Boba Fett and that armor and Timothy Olyphant, that was some really important stuff. Obviously the Great Dragon stuff was awesome to see, but the second episode was very much a side mission with the spiders and the Frog Lady, and the third episode bringing the Frog Lady back and finding the Mandalorians and Bo-Katan, and that's a whole other storyline that's happening there. And in this episode you're back on Navarro with Carl Weathers and Gina Carano and the Mandalorian, and them going after this Imperial base where you find the cloner guy and these things in tanks, and there's so many things that are happening right now, and all 4 of these episodes have been very separate and very distinct from one another, and I really hope that the last 4 episodes of this season they really bring into a head, or at least the last 3. Let's get Ahsoka next episode, and the last 3 we can tie them all together, and hopefully by the end of this season it's going to be really come together, and that's what I'm hoping for the rest of this season. And I did want to cover a couple other things that I did take notes. We had Horatio Sanz come back as his little blue alien creature that we saw in the very pilot episode of The Mandalorian, and this guy, I enjoy him. I think some people might not like him because they think he's a little too goofy, and he's definitely a goofy character, but I mean, he sprays this like mist out of his neck whenever he gets afraid, when he sees the Mandalorian at the beginning of the episode, and he just like sprays this thing out of fear, and it's like kind of inking himself. It was very funny. And like when he's having a shootout towards the end when they're in the Imperial base, and he's like popping his head up and down really fast, and he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. He turns one way and then like runs back because he's turning the wrong direction. He has a lot of funny moments like that, and I enjoy his character in this episode and in this show in general. I kind of like his presence in this thing, and his kind of relationship of having like 350 years served under Carl Weathers' character. That was great. Now obviously the child just wants to eat everything. There's these little like They look like little macarons, these blue little candies that this kid is eating in the school, which, again, I mentioned that earlier. He's kind of put in a school, and then the stupid baby just wants to eat everything he can possibly get, and he uses the Force to steal this poor kid's little blue macaron candy things, and he's just like, it's mine, and he starts eating them. And I'll put another montage of cute baby Yoda stuff in this episode, because there was a lot. Obviously, baby Yoda trying to fix the ship at the beginning of the episode, and just being very baby Groot in that scene. Very much of like, oh, you push this button, do not push this one, push this button, put this wire in this spot and that wire in that spot. Do not put them together. And guess what he does? He puts them together because he's a baby. So what are you going to do? And of course, when it comes to the actual episode itself and the action that I mentioned at the very beginning of this review, the action was insane, because you went from, like, you know, raiding this Imperial base and being very discreet and going back and forth, and then having a shootout with all these stormtroopers, and then making your grand escape. Mandalorian went off to get the child, and then everybody else went on this ship, and they flew it off the cliff all the way down, and then some stormtroopers on speeders started chasing after them, and Carl Weathers had to shoot them out. And then when those were done and the base exploded, then all these TIE fighters go after them. Now he went from being chased by 3 guys on like speeder bikes to 4 entire TIE fighters chasing them, which was like this entire sequence from that beginning part of them running around hallways being all discreet to this explosion of just chase sequences after that. This was really entertaining. Of course, the Razor Crest, all fixed and brand new by the end of this episode, swoops in and destroys those ships and then flies off. So I mean, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's another solid one. I still think episode 3 and 1 are my favorites. So hopefully the odd ones are the great ones of this season. So hopefully episode 5 will have Ahsoka. I need to see Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, because I love her character in the Clone Wars. I haven't seen all of Rebels, but I'm trying to work through that as well. So thanks guys for watching this review. If you have anything else to say about this episode, have any theories, comment them down below, because I'm very interested to hear all of your guys' thoughts as well. So thanks guys for watching. Like I said, comment down below, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share the channel. We're almost at 500 subscribers, and we're trying to get to the goal of 500 within the next 5 years. So I think we can do it. So subscribe to the channel, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.